Shall we start? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Let us open our heart to His love. Give us, O Lord, graciously your Holy Spirit. Guide us from within. Incline our will toward your will. And we ask you this through the powerful intercession of Our Lady, who is always present among us. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. A good morning to everybody, and a very warm welcome to you. Today, it has been announced to some of you, maybe not to everybody, but there is a change. We are continuing the same topic of last time, which is the Act of Oblation of St. Therese of the Child Jesus, for the simple reason of the richness of this act. And even though we already in the first two parts last Wednesday have done already a lot in situating the act in its historical context, then reading the act and commenting it, the act in itself deserves way more. It doesn't deserve only 2 more hours, but plenty more. But of course, we will just be happy with these 2 coming hours. So I hope you won't be disappointed. I'm sure you won't be disappointed, because hopefully you will see things unfolding through this powerful event. So very shortly, for people who weren't there last time, we have presented the historical context of the Act of Oblation to the merciful love of St. Therese of the Child Jesus. You received the 2-sided copy of the Act, the presentation of the Act and the Act. I presented it in the historical context, showing that there are other offerings happening, etc. We will come back to that, but from a new angle. And then I read and commented the Act. So this is what, if you missed the previous 2 hours, this is what has been done. Today, we are still with the same Act, and I invite you right straight away from the beginning to take the second sheet that you received, which starts on top by PN 23. PN 23. PN alludes in the entire corpus of the works of Saint Therese of the Child Jesus to poems. In French, it's poésie, and the English kept the same capital letters to show that these are the poems. Remember that you can online access all the works of St. Therese and plenty more. So I consider this as a golden mine, because they show you the English translation, and in front of it, not only the original in a French text, but the original as a photocopy of her own writing for each document. So it's really a huge work, a huge endeavor, and it's really fabulous what they're doing. Bless them. So today, I would like to start with a poem that Therese wrote few days after the Act of Oblation. So we are still, in a way, under the intensity, the fire of the Act of Oblation. The poem is written to a very dear nun to Saint Therese. This nun is Sister Marie of the Sacred Heart. And remember, who is Marie? Marie is her godmother in life, sister, blood sister, older than Therese, of course. And Marie, I think, to a certain extent, I'm following here some people who knew the Therese sisters. No, my master, Father Louis Guillet, knew her sisters in Lisieux because he was a Carmelite. They were Carmelites. They had, of course, like many opportunities to meet, but of course in Lisieux, because he would go, they would go, I mean the fathers would go to Lisieux for different conferences they had for many reasons throughout the years. So he seemed, Father Louis Guillet, French Carmelite from the south of France, he died now in 92, he died in 92, so we're talking history now. He tended to say that Marie was the one who maybe understood a little bit more Saint Therese. Don't take this as a gospel word and a total truth, but at least it opens for us a little bit more intellectually and emotionally. It opens us a little bit more toward whatever Therese would say to her sister. Remember, we will see, I discussed the other day, but today we will read this letter when Marie resisted a lot. She has a very independent temperament, Marie, to the point that even her parents, her father, was surprised that she wanted to become a nun. One day before that, he asked her, what do you want to do? Do you want to become a nun? She said, no, I don't like nuns. I don't think she said, I hate them, but she said, I don't like them. And there are words, nothing bad in a Christian way, but it's like, it's not my cup of tea, if you want to say it in English, no? And he asked her, so do you want to marry? The answer was no. Slavery? No. So you see, that's the type of Marie, a very independent person. You hardly imagine her as a nun, but here you are. She is a nun. She's, because, you know, as a Carmelite especially, you have to follow, no? You have to obey 24 hours. So for an independent temperament, it's difficult. It's difficult. So this is Marie a little bit for you, but as well, Marie is a very secret person. She has a lot inside of her, to a certain extent very close to Therese. Remember in this story of the soul, manuscript B, the fiery manuscript B, which is an account of her retreat. You find this in the story of the soul, no? It's a very small document in the middle of two bigger documents, one very big and one slightly medium size. Manuscript B is in the middle. In fact, it's a letter from Therese to her sister, same one, Marie, giving the account of her retreat. A retreat Therese made in September 1896, okay? But this document is fire. Fire. I know monks who had that document in their pocket day and night to tell you the intensity and how these things are perceived by monks, at least, no? If not holy monks, you see. So we are dealing here with a straight line of communication. Slightly different from the communication between Therese and Celine. I remember I said Celine is like the other self of Therese, but Marie is a very special person as well. So, after having said all that, now, Marie, her name is Marie of the Sacred Heart. Remember what Therese says about Sacred Heart, very unsettling for us, I would say, Catholics, good Catholics, traditional Catholics. My way of seeing the Sacred Heart is very different. This is what Therese says. It's like, I don't have this. Remember, we are in the 19th century in France, so the Sacred Heart is a huge devotion, still is in the Catholic world a huge devotion. We have even a solemnity for it, no? And the opportunity of this poem is very probably the solemnity of the Sacred Heart as well, which follows a little bit after, as we still have them today, the Feast of the Trinity. Remember, the Solemnity of the Trinity is the opportunity, is the moment where Therese received the grace of the Act of Offering. So, it's only few days after where you have the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart, and Marie is of the Sacred Heart, but Therese has a slightly different way of understanding and seeing the Sacred Heart. For her, it's not a devotion, it's not something that you go for even emotionally, it's something at the center. It's really the center of Jesus himself, and Jesus is one of the Trinity, one of the three in the Trinity, so it's really, we are reaching the most intense, fiery area, if you want, in God, in the incarnate God, okay? So, Therese writes a poem to Marie. This is a way amongst the Carmelite nuns to express it's like a present. Nuns, Carmelite nuns between themselves, what will they offer? They don't possess anything. So what they will offer is a poem, for instance, as an example. No? It could be something else, but because you don't have a great deal, so what will you offer? So one of the habits in the Carmelite order, remember St. John of the Cross and his great poems, beautiful, fiery poems, very theological. It's a tradition in the Carmelite world to write poems, but not poems like, it's spiritual poems, no? It's all spiritual. But you have very spiritual, very intense, less intense, you know, you have graduation in the intensity of the poems, okay? Depending on who writes it and to whom you're writing it, which is the reason why I'm introducing this poem. This poem is composed of 8 stanzas. You have this poem in front of you, hopefully. The first 3 are about Mary Magdalene. There are for the Act of Oblation and the understanding of the Act of Oblation of lesser importance. This is why they do not appear in front of you. I skipped them. You may very well find them and read them. There's nothing bad in that. But I would like here to underline few aspects that shed a light on the Act of Offering, how Therese understands it and how she words it in different ways here in the middle of a poem, okay? Okay. By the way, this is not the unique moment, the unique poem where Therese expresses things about the Act of Oblation, because remember, the Act of Oblation becomes something very central in her life. From that day on, from the 9th of June 95 until her death, please remember that. From the 9th of June 1895 till the 30th of September 97, the Act of Oblation is central in her daily life, every moment. Remember, she says in the Act of Oblation, in the Act itself, I want to repeat it so many times. I want to repeat it with the beat of my heart, which we will hopefully see today. How can we achieve that challenge? Okay? So, the Act of Oblation is not something amongst other things. It becomes the core of Therese, and this is me talking here. I would say it becomes her form of prayer, the most fiery and most simplified way of prayer. We will see that as well later on. You see what I'm trying to say? So it's not, yeah, I did the act and now I'm busy with other things. No, I am still busy with the act till the end of my life. Every day, every moment. You see? So it's important to understand. So it's not to the point that me as a theologian ask myself, if it is that important, I'm talking as a theologian, no, thinking of the entire church, not just Saint Therese. If it is that important, so how can we understand it in theology? How we can see it in the scriptures? Scriptures. Is it in the scriptures? It is your right to ask the question. If it is that important for the greatest saint in modern times, well, therefore, it must be somewhere in the rest, and we don't see it. As she wasn't seeing it, and she is opening our God through her is opening our eyes to it, we should open our eyes on many other things in order to spot the presence of that needed connection with God. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So, I hope you... So, it's not the only poem. There are plenty of other poems after the Act of Oblation, where you can spot here and there things that belong to the same vein, the same quality, the same fire of the Act of Oblations, underlining certain points. Like today we will see a point of weakness, which is what we are about to see. How do I deal with my weakness in spiritual life? We've already seen that, but since it's a daily experience that we have, our weakness, Therese comes back to that. And remember, Therese is not talking to saints. She's talking to her sisters, in the monastery. So, of course, she considers them certainly as holy persons, but, not necessarily as fiery as her. So, she's talking to us. She's talking to normal people, okay? So, weakness is something that we experience and could be, in our mind, a hindrance or an obstacle. But I am weak. I'm not like Saint Therese. So what am I supposed to say? So she has the answer, okay? In other poems as well. So now, stanza 4, PN 23, to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Of course, the original is in French. I need a heart burning with tenderness. This is Therese talking, singing, expressing her faith, expressing her belief. Of course, she's talking to her sister, but this is what she wants. She wants a heart, and of course, this heart is Jesus' heart, okay? So I want a heart burning with tenderness. Remember, she's a woman. 95, she's 22 years old. She's not married. She has emotions. She has a need to love and be loved. And remember, Jesus for her is the real love. The falling in love story, the love story of her life is real, and it has a name, and it's Jesus. Do you follow me? This is very important. And so when she says burning with tenderness, it's a woman who is talking, it's a young woman who is talking. We are all young, when we want to love, we are all young. When you see people of 60 years old falling, or 70 years old falling in love, it's like you say, oh, these are like two little birds of teenagers' birds, no? Anyway, so when she speaks about this tenderness, it's real, it's not fake. What I'm trying to convey, of course, knowing a little bit Therese through her writings and etc., this tenderness is important. And it will be a great paradox after a few months in Therese, because she won't feel that tenderness, but she will still live with tenderness. That's the great mystery of her trial, which starts April the following year, in 96. We had a talk a few weeks ago on the trial. You can watch it online. I need a heart burning with tenderness. You see, spiritual life doesn't deprive you from your emotions, but it purifies and elevates your emotions. God wants your emotions. We are human beings. We are not angels. So God takes our heart, purifies it, elevates it, and fills it. You see? So it's not fake what we are reading here. I need a heart burning with tenderness. Therese saying she wants Jesus, who will be my support forever, who loves everything in me, even my weakness. You see? This, as I said the other day, is a revolution in itself. We never heard with such clarity from a saint before Therese saying that God loves our weakness. We tend to behave the opposite way, which means we tend to say we need to be strong, we need to be faithful, we need to do this, we need to do that, otherwise God will be upset with us, otherwise we will be sinning. Yes or no? Therese is not saying we have to sin. Oh, far from her mind, trust me. She's very strong and very adamant. But despite that, she's not blind. Her eyes are wide open to her own weakness. And weakness is an important point in the search that Therese has for holiness. Remember, Therese is obsessed from 2 years old, 3 years old. This is the family. The family is obsessed by, in a good sense of the word, by the desire to become saints, to be saints or to become saints. So it's a machine production, industrial production of holiness, this family. You should read. It's not only Therese, because when you read Therese, you see, oh, she's wonderful, she's amazing, she's already saint from the age of 3. Well, read the others as well. Read her sisters. They have the same language. It's the family. I don't think that all the families in her time were like that, but anyway. So there is an obsession about holiness. But there is something very important, and this is healthy. This is healthy to want to be holy. No, it's very healthy. On the contrary, we need that. But she is down to earth, she is realistic, she has her eyes open, and she is aware that she is weak. She's not hiding it to herself for a few years. No. From day one, she says, when I read about saints, of course, our version of saints, which sometimes inflate a lot the muscles, no? The spiritual muscles are super inflated like the bodybuilding guys. Now when you look at them, the way we describe saints, it's like describing a bodybuilding man, no? His muscles are triple or quadruple our muscles everywhere, so it's like we say, oh wow. It's like you're in front of a Greek statue, no? Perfect proportions, harmony, beauty. We see holiness this way, unconsciously. And for many years, trust me, it remains in us. We have this human bad habit of projecting some notions of perfection into spiritual life. Therese doesn't do that. She's one of the rarest saints where you very hardly find any deviation from truth. And this is truth. I can't fake holiness. It's not because holiness is everything, is very important, that I can change its nature, present it in a wrong way, which is often the case when you open books, a story of saints, yes or not? They told you first thing, what about their miracles? It's like, okay, well, I haven't done any miracle, so is there any hope for me? And the way they present their virtues, they are like bodybuilding people from the age of from 0, no? Like if you read Padre Pio, you have the impression that you are in front of a big mountain. You can never reach the top of the mountain, yes or no? Therese has this experience. and expresses it throughout her writings. She said, when I'm in front of this, but this is me adding, this is our rendering of holiness, which is not necessarily the true rendering of holiness. This is why Therese brings a healthy cleaning up and tidying up of our understanding of what is holiness, and can holiness be realized, affordable by us humans, us weak people. You see what I'm trying to say? Okay? So, Therese says, I'm in front of mountains. I will never be able to reach that height. But she doesn't drop the desire of becoming a saint. That's the genius, no, of Therese. She persists because she says it's impossible. This is a true thing. So certainly there is a way out. There is a way to reach holiness, but not to become like these mountains. Thank God, because these mountains, in my understanding, are anyway a fake rendering of the saints. You see? So weakness here is a addressing weakness. Sorry, not weakness. Acknowledging weakness, not hiding it. And solving the problem of weakness is fundamental, because this is our daily experience, yes or not? So the amazing thing with Therese is that if you accept the truth, your own truth, you feel that you are part of the people she's writing to or talking to or befriending. You see what I'm trying to say? You feel that it's possible. She opened the way, as she says it, for the weak and the little and the small. I would say the normal. The normal people. And the normal people, we are not 100% functioning. We have a little bit of 25% of things. I like her description of one of her nuns, no? In a community you have all sorts of people. You don't choose your people. You arrive there and you accept things as they are. And you have all sorts of temperaments and characters and personalities in a community, okay? So one of the nuns, she was rather of a venerable age, but I like the way Therese describes her. She says this nun is like an old grandfather clock. You know these clocks are that every quarter of an hour you have to put it on time again. What a deep understanding of the human being. It's not a spiritual judgment, it's not a moral judgment, it's a human, almost I would say psychological, understanding of the human being. This is a young girl of 22, 23 years old who had that statement. She said, this nun is like an old grandfather clock that every quarter of an hour, can you believe? It's like you say this to her and then you go around the corner and you come back again and you have to re-say it again. It's like almost an Alzheimer thing, But it's not Alzheimer, it's a difficulty, So you have to put her on time every quarter of an hour. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Is holiness possible for this person? For Therese, yes. That's the good news of Therese. The good news of God, of course, who sent us Therese. Okay? So you see, when Therese speaks about weakness, it's not just a word. You see, I stopped over one word in a poem and I'm stuck there because I want to show you that it is as central as the Act of Oblation for Therese, because weakness is my reality. So is weakness a hindrance? Is weakness an obstacle for that Act of Oblation, or better said, for the action of the activity of the love of God in me? Is it because I am weak that I can't receive the love of God? Therese flips it 180 degrees and says, on the contrary. You are more proper, as I said the other day. You are more combustible, you are more adapted to the work of the love of God. You see? It's a little, as I said it the other day as well. Sorry, I'm repeating myself, forgive me, but I think it's important to repeat. St. Paul begs the Lord 3 times. He says it in his, I think, first letter to the Corinthians. No, he says 3 times I beg the Lord to remove something. He was something that was annoying him. Probably in his desire to be perfect according to his own perception. What is God's answer? He said, no, I won't remove it. My grace is abundant, becomes abundant in that situation of yours. In you acknowledging your weakness, accepting it, and Therese will add a new word, loving it. Who loves his own weakness? I can't say that still. You see? This is perfection. Do you understand where perfection is? Do you see how our understanding of perfection, when we follow the great saints and masters of spiritual life, is invited to change? My way of picturing God, my way of picturing perfection, my way of understanding what I'm supposed to do will develop throughout my life. So please remain flexible till last minute. Because God will surprise you every day by showing you what pleases Him and not what necessarily pleases you. Because when you say, accepting my weakness and loving my weakness, I mean, come on. It's not in our Catholic books, this thing. Now, yes, more because of Therese. But if you go back 100 years, it's 180 degrees opposite to that. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to be very virtuous, you have to be very faithful. Of course you have to, but you're not blind. In the midst of all that battle, you discover that it's not working the way you think, okay? So, I need a heart burning with tenderness who will be my support forever, who loves everything in me, even my weakness. Even my weakness. Okay, well, we'll come back to that, but it's important, if you have the book, in chapter 15, which is page 81, 82, 83. In this chapter, which has the title, Is Our Weakness a Hindrance to the Fire? I do quote Therese's letter to Marie, her sister Marie. You find this at page 891. I think. We have the same copy. Page 91. Is it? Page 91? In the middle of the page you have a quote, "Oh dear sister, I beg you, understand your little girl. Understand that to love Jesus, to be his victim of love, the weaker one is, without desires or virtues, the more suited," that's the word I was looking for, suited, "one is for the workings of this consuming and transforming love." You see that? This is written in September 96, which is more than a year after this poem. And it is repeating the same thing to the same person. Do you follow me? Do you find it, whoever has the book, do you have that? In page 90, you have, in the middle of the page, a quote. And then comes one of the most beautiful texts in all Christianity. This is me presenting it. "Oh dear sister, I beg you." So this is taken from the letter of Saint Therese, letter 197 of Therese to her sister Marie of the Sacred Heart, 17 September 96, which is after having given the manuscript B. Sorry, I hope I'm not overwhelming you too much with historical information, no? Remember, after manuscript B, which it goes along with the same, it's an extension of the Act of the Oblation, by the way, manuscript B. It comes after it, not before it. The Act of Oblation, manuscript B. So when she gives manuscript B to her sister, I just said it earlier on, her sister says, no, 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 I don't have your desires, because in manuscript B, Therese expresses powerfully her desires. So her sister Marie says, oh, I don't have your desires, I will never be able to be a saint like you, or I will never be able to love God as you love. Can this be possible? So Therese fires back this letter, 17th September 96, saying, of course, yes, you can. And here, this letter is central in the teaching of Therese, because in this letter, Therese only focuses on the objection of her sister, which is weakness, incapacity, I don't think I can. So Therese takes weakness 100%, takes it 100% and addresses it 100%. So she says, oh dear sister, I beg you. You see the intensity. She feels that her sister is about to drop her desire to love God as Therese loves God. And this is central for Therese. It's impossible. You can't drop that. You have to want. You need to want to love God as Therese loved God. So she doesn't want that to escape from her. So she begs her. She said, I beg you, understand your little girl. She says little girl because in life before she was her godmother. Understand that to love Jesus, to be his victim of love, the weaker, we never heard that in the history of Christianity. The weaker one is without desires or virtues. I would add here acknowledgement or perception of virtues, because you can have a virtue but you're not aware of it. The more suited. This is revolutionary. This is almost heterodox. This is almost unorthodox to say that. Almost. She's on the fringe. Of course, I'm not saying it is. I say it's. I'm just showing you how it is shocking, to which extent it is shocking to hear that. But it's not shocking, it's the truth. But we are not used to this truth. We hid behind many things for many centuries, thinking that we can, that holiness is this, holiness is that. Therese says, no, it doesn't work this way. The more suited one is for the workings of this consuming and transforming love. The desire alone to be a victim, how do you pronounce this? Suffices, thank you. But we must consent to remain always poor and without strength. Poor in the French meaning means limited. It doesn't mean poor materially. Poor means spiritually, I don't have many means. You see, I don't have spiritual richnesses. You see, this is poor here, poverty. Blessed poor in spirit. No. Consent to remain poor, which means your old desires to become like a mountain will never be fulfilled. The mountain being the saints. Remember, you understand here the problem. She says, no, you have to drop your first understanding of holiness and understand how it works. It works differently. The interaction between the human being and God work differently if you are seeking the truth. Okay? You see, we must consent. So if you want to be a saint, you can't hide your weakness to yourself. You need to accept it, you need to love it, and further, even further, consent to remain. It's like I will never have the satisfaction of seeing myself a hero, spiritual hero. Well, yeah. I won't be able to see myself in a mirror performing amazing acts. Well, yeah. So holiness is not a shiny thing. I'm walking with a circle, a shiny circle on top of my head and gliding over the water and things like that. Well, yeah. Oh, you see? Oh, I thought it's a bit disappointing, no? Holiness is a bit disappointing. The real holiness is a bit disappointing. You understand? This is fundamental. The church relentlessly proclaims the gospel. The core of the gospel, we are all called to be holy, to be perfect. But the big problem is, do we understand what is holiness and what is perfection? Therese is a real guide here. She's a doctor of the church, doctor of the weak, but the weak is everybody. Don't ever think that there are people who are weak and people who are not. No. It's people who are weak and people who claim that they are not weak and don't want to see their weakness. Do you follow me? Otherwise, you are misled. I'm sorry. So the story of the mountains, in fact, in a proper interpretation of or understanding of what she says, doesn't exist. There are no mountains. Never been any mountain. You see what I'm trying to say? Okay? Now. The desire alone to be a victim suffices, but we must consent to remain always poor, which means limited spiritually, and without strength. And this is the difficulty and she quotes here the psalmist, the psalm, the truly poor in spirit, where do we find him? Poor in spirit means what she's describing. He is poor, he acknowledges this, he loves it, and he consents to remain always like that. God is still working, by the way, and God works better. Why? Because you dropped it. Because you are not the one who leads anymore. You allow him to lead. You allow him to surprise you. You allow him to go in a different direction than yours. You are becoming more flexible, more fluid, more liquid in his hands. So God can work. You understand why it's better? Because the other holiness, you are in control of it. Please, do you see that point? The other holiness, we are in full control of it. This is not holiness. This is maybe a preparation, if you want, steps before, but we have to drop it. You reach a point where you say, oh, yeah. Oh, I think, I need to convert. I need to change. Convert in the sense of growing. You see what I'm trying to say? Change. Convert is change. From an understanding of holiness to a better understanding of holiness. That's key. That's crucial. That's the crux of everything. Okay? So she says, this is the difficulty. This is the difficulty. You're searching for something a good warfare, spiritual warfare. Well, this is your spiritual warfare. To accept, to remain like this, to be poor, to have this capacity to be truthful with yourself, and to have the capacity to acknowledge how God sees holiness and not how I see holiness. So to allow God to be in full control and not me. To allow God to realize holiness in me, but the holiness he sees and he needs to realize, not the holiness I think is, according to the books we read. You see what I'm trying to say? Books, I mean by that the stories of the saints. Okay? You follow me? So, the truly poor in spirit, where do we find him? You must look for him from afar, says the psalmist. He does not say that you must look for him amongst great souls, but from afar. That is to say, in lowliness, in nothingness. And let us remain then very far from all that sparkles. She's talking about the other holiness. Let us remain very far from all that sparkles. Let us love our littleness. This is a revolution in the history of the church. Let us love to feel nothing. She said to feel nothing. then we shall be poor in spirit, and Jesus will come to look for us. And however far we may be, he will transform us in flames of love. Again, just to be fair with her teaching, she's not saying, well, drop everything, don't do anything, don't try to be faithful, don't try every day, stop praying and just go with whenever the wind is blowing, go follow the wind. No, she's not saying that. She's entering deeper in the same context that we have, the same faithfulness we have, but she's trying to change the way we look at it, and the way we understand the interaction with God in that same context. She's easing the way and changing the way. Okay? Got the point? Got the point? Okay. Sorry. So that was just the third verse of the fourth stanza we were reading, no? Who loves everything in me, even my weakness. She spotted her. She knew her sister, and she was already. This is a year before the text I just read. Okay. And who never leaves me day or night. This, you see Therese's faith. She believes that Jesus, not her. Jesus, not her, never leaves me day or night. We consider that God is faithful to us if we are faithful to Him. No. God is faithful to us all the time. He is present all the time. In other ways, if we use one of the great symbols Therese uses and tradition uses, the sun. The sun is always shining. We have clouds? Yes, we have clouds. But beyond the clouds, the sun is always there. It never goes. And this is faith. I know that Jesus loves me. As you see, she addressed weakness. And she will address even when I fall. I won't do it now because otherwise I won't move at all. When I fall, you find it here. It's a quote. You can find it in her story in the story of the soul. No? When I fall, what do? I wet my wings, my little wings. I'm a little bird with hardly any feather, just a little duvet. No? I wet my wings means I do things that I'm not supposed to do. Call them sins, call them errors, call them faults, call them deviations, call them whatever you want. I did something that I'm not supposed to do. So what do? She says. Do I escape from God or do I face God? Look at the power of her eyes, how she pierces the clouds. She says, I will remain in front of the sun, even though there are clouds between me and the sun. But I'm still in front of the sun. And I expose my little wings, wet wings, which means I tell him what I have done. Attracting his love by acknowledging what I've done, but saying, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it. You continue. You don't just go in circles with your own error or your own sin. No, she opened it. You see what she did? She didn't lose a moment. She didn't say, oh, I will then close myself in my sin and go and meditate on my sin. For her, that would be a second sin. She's quicker than that. She says, no, I committed a sin, and then what? I tell him. Expecting his rays, the sun, to appear and dry my wet wings. You see what she's doing here? So she doesn't lose time. She goes directly to the sun. Because otherwise you are losing time and you are committing another sin, which is going further away from God. Sorry, I'm doing it now. I said I won't do it. I'm doing it. I will give you another example that she tells us, which is a very deeply moving example of how she understands God. I want people to know God as I know Him. I want people to love God as I love Him, she says. She gives us a very interesting example. She tells the story of daily life. Two children at home, probably brothers or sisters, and they are playing, and then they break a vase in the living room. Happens, no? Now, she describes the reaction of, this is something probably that happened to her, no? She describes the reaction of the two different reactions in each of the children. One of them goes and hides. He knows he did something that will hugely displease his mother or his father. So he goes away, escapes, because he fears the reaction. Pay attention here. She's talking about us and God. And how do we react? Do we react like the first child or the second child? Well, now, the second child does what? Which is what I was explaining right now. Do you remember that? The second child goes to the mother and says, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to break the vase, it broke. And asks his mother to punish him or her with what? A kiss. Do you understand the revolution here? How? First, she understands God, she understands his heart, and as there is a French expression, I don't know if you can translate it in English for me. Prendre Dieu par le cœur, which means to take God from his heart. It's like to win him. Prendre in this sense in French means to get him, to win him, to conquer him, to win. Huh? Possession, if you want, yeah, prendre. But it's not prendre like to take in this sense, in the sense of winning him. It's like, I got you. When you say, I got you. Yeah. So, to get God by using means of heart. Heart means, par le cœur. Not brain means, not logic, not justice, but emotion or heart. Which theologically, it's like the theologian stands in front of it and says, this is not part of my dictionary, no? I don't understand. Well, what is heart here, emotions? I don't deal with that, you see? So what does it mean? What are you doing here with God? You say, punish me with a kiss. You don't find that in our books. Did you ever find the 10 Commandments before confession? You have to check your conscience before confession. I did this, I did that, etc. You have to go and confess all that, and in the end you will receive your penance. And imagine what? Imagine the priest asks you, okay, God is now, punishing you with a kiss. It's like, this priest he lost it completely, no? What would you say? If in confession the priest says to you, oh, God is very angry with you, and he is punishing you. I assure you, he's punishing you right now with a kiss. It's like you feel the power of the wrath and anger of God, and then suddenly, with a kiss. You understand the surprise? It's like, oh, what is this language? I remember the first time I read that, it was, I remember it, no? In January 1985, I said, she's certainly not crazy. She doesn't lose the plot. So probably there is something that we need to discover here. We need to explore. This is a logic that is not our logic. And this is, in fact, the core of the Act of Oblation. Because remember, how did the Act of Oblation how was it triggered? Remember what we said the other day. It was triggered by another Act of Oblation to the justice of God. This is fundamental. To understand Therese's spontaneous, purely theological, pure theology answer to the understanding of God that the church in her time, or the church there where she was, the people, the understanding they had of God himself. Remember the story, no? God is upset because of all the sins that are committed in the society. Huh? You can still think the same right now. We have enough reasons to think that, no? How many horrors do we witness every day? So we are still in it, no? So you can say God is very upset with that. Therefore, he's offended because of these acts. Therefore, we need to repair. We need to find a way out of that. How do you face the horrors we are witnessing every day? Well, I think abortion, at the least. No, it's horrific. No, how do you? God is upset. We are, whatever. I don't want to dive too much into that. No? So God is upset. We need to repair. How do we repair? In the France of the 19th century and many other countries, and go back in time as well, and even till recently, you have to offer yourself to the justice of God in order to absorb that upsetness of God and rebalance the things. Therese says no. None of these acts of reparation is capable of solving the problem. None of these acts of reparation, as we do them, as we make them, as we realize them, is capable of solving the problem or getting anything, getting us a few inches ahead. It is from the love of God, purifying us, transforming us, elevating us, that our acts can have a value. This is pure theology, and it's absolutely fine. Many people would agree with that. This is normal, good theology. No. What makes anything meritorious is the grace of God itself, which should be at the origin of our act. We are fully in it right now. Therese says, you want to solve the problem of society, you want to save souls, I want to save souls as well. But God showed me the way. It's not by offering myself to his justice and trying to repair, if you want. It's by offering myself to his mercy, his merciful love. There are no other solutions, because the other is not working. She doesn't say it so bluntly because maybe she didn't have the opportunity, but it doesn't work. It's almost, I would say, a theological decision offered by Therese. She says, no. She said, I don't feel inclined, but in fact she's going way further than that. She said, no, it doesn't work. And why do you have this sheet, this poem in front of you? Because in fact I wanted you to read the stanza number 7. So I'm jumping from stanza 4 to stanza 7. She says, and this is, remember, the 21st of June 95, we are few days after the Act of Oblation. Remember, in the Act of Oblation she says, our acts of righteousness, our justice, nos justice, in French, nos justice, no act of justice, have all have stains. It means they can't reach God. They can't take off and reach heaven. She says love only can reach God. Justice doesn't take off. It is me rewording some aspects of the act. So she repeats the same concept here, and this is why I wanted to give you this sheet today. Number 7. I know well all our righteousness. In French, toute nos justice, which means acts of trying to quench this wrath or this anger, or rebalance the balance of sins and things, and re-put things upright. No? Je le sais bien, toutes nos justices. I know well all our righteousness is worthless in your sight. It means In other words, your holiness doesn't work. Your faithfulness to God doesn't work. It's still not enough. And you need to make a huge leap ahead. And that leap is God Himself who wants to make it. And in order to make it, you just need, as one condition, she says, you just need to accept your weakness. Isn't that cheap? It is cheap. So let us do it. It doesn't cost a lot. I mean, maybe it costs, I don't know. If you are a mountain person, it might cost you, yeah, to accept that you are not a mountain. But you understand what is happening here, okay? So the price to pay to enter in that different logic, in God's logic, purely God's logic, is to accept my weakness and offer myself to God. To give value to my sacrifices, I want to cast them into your divine heart. But for her, the divine heart is a furnace burning of love, of the fire of love of God, the merciful love of God. So you see, the merciful love she offered herself to is in fact the fire of the heart of Jesus. And it's like if you enter in Jesus' heart, it's like entering in a furnace full of fire. I don't know if you watched a stone-baked pizza. If you try to put your nose inside of the oven, some of them sometimes are full of fire. No? Multiply this fire by 1,000. This is Jesus' heart. Of course, not baking pizza, but baking our hearts, okay? Now, to give value to my sacrifices, which means I'm still doing my sacrifices. You see, she's not dropping it, but she is casting them into the divine heart. Whatever I'm doing, whatever is done, and my weakness as well, even my weakness, is casted in the heart of Jesus. Which is, you see the union here, the unity between Sacred Heart and Act of Oblation. Yeah, we are facing the same thing. You did not find your angels without blemish. In the midst of the lightning, you gave your law. She's talking about Moses. I hide myself in your Sacred Heart, Jesus. I do not fear. My virtue is you. You see? So in order to reach God, I need God. The lifting power to God is God. Remember, we do it in the Mass every day. Lift up your hearts. Of course, it's like the sacrifices. You offer them. But then what do? You cast them. You throw your heart in the furnace. And it's the furnace that lifts us, you see. So it's very important to understand that the lifting power that allows us to reach God is the love of God Himself. You see what I'm trying to say? That's fundamental. I need God to reach God. This is why there are no other solutions. If I want to reach God, there are no other solutions than offering myself to God, because this is the way that I will be elevated. Hence the fundamental need for the oblation, the act of oblation, to the merciful love. It's not optional. The act of oblation in the journey of the realization of holiness is not an option. It is mandatory. Don't take it too literal in the sense that everybody in the church has to recite the act of oblation. Hopefully in the coming hour I will show you the simplification that Therese realizes of the act. But the core of it, which is offering my heart. When you ask St. John Chrysostom, what is prayer? He says prayer is lifting our heart. You ask Dionysius, what is prayer? It's giving, lifting. And this is the true key of any prayer. If you want to enter in contact with God, it's important to give your heart to His love. I cannot reach God directly by myself. This is, of course, not possible. So what is the solution? Is there a solution? Yes, to offer myself to the fire of His love. Okay? Now, let us stop for 3 minutes and continue with the rest. Please remember, if you don't have the book, I'm not forcing you, of course, with all due respect. Remember, the book is vital for the comments I'm making.